Here we are, my friends, talking about the Detroit Red Wings and what can be with their center core. Obviously, right now, taking a look at a Dylan Larkin-less Red Wings forward roster, this isn't how the team is supposed to look like. And, based off of what Steve Yzerman said in his press conference a few days ago, I think it's fair to say that the Red Wings probably want to put an emphasis on building up the roster for next year. Whether or not that involves a trade for a guy like a Robert Thomas or an Elias Pettersson, that remains to be seen. But in this video, we are responding to the idea of another center playing for another blue team, potentially being an option for the Red Wings in Detroit. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're talking about Auston Matthews and whether or not a trade to the Red Wings is actually possible. Now you might be looking at me saying, Lego, what the hell are you doing? Why are you making this kind of a video? And I'll tell you why. It's because out of all the center candidates we have discussed in the possible Detroit Red Wings conversation, we've discussed guys like Robert Thomas, we have gone over the Vinny Trocheks of the world, we also spoke about Elias Pettersson too, obviously cannot forget about Petey. But it bears repeating that out of all of these guys, yes, it is true, Elias Pettersson might have been one of the highest paid, Robert Thomas might have had one of the best points per dollar on the contract, or even points per game if you want to mathematically point that out. But none of these guys bring true star power potential like Auston Matthews out of the Maple Leafs. Now, where exactly is this coming from? Am I just pulling this out of thin air? No, technically not. Let's head over onto Spectre's Hockey, posted by Lyle Richardson from April 24th, 2026. Because this NHL rumor mill goes over what some of the Red Wings reporters had been saying about different trade candidates and what the Rings might be interested in doing. Bob Duff reported that Red Wings GM Stevie Y was asked what his club needed to get over the hump and end their decade-long postseason drought. The most obvious answer would be, "We need better players," Yzerman said. He added that it was incumbent upon me and my staff to improve the team. Now, let's go a little further. Duff speculated that Yzerman could revisit trade talks with the Rangers for Trocheck and wondered if the Wings GM would roll the dice on Vancouver Canucks Mercurial center Elias Pettersson. Meanwhile, on MLive.com, Ansar Khan also noted that Yzerman is prepared to make a major move to improve his club in the offseason, but he wondered if such move is available. Khan noted that players such as Trocheck and Pettersson, as well as Robert Thomas and Jordan Kyrou of the Blues, were the subject of trade rumors this season. He speculated that Auston Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs could become the biggest name in this summer's rumor mill. Goal scoring is the Red Wings' biggest need, especially at even strength. Khan believes Yzerman will seek a top six forward, preferably a center. They also must improve their bottom six forwards. Now, the idea of Auston Matthews of the Toronto Maple Leafs becoming the highest profile, most talked about name on the trade block, that's a pretty intriguing proposal to me personally. I would love to see what fans, media, and analysts go out there and talk about in regards to a Matthews trade, and if the Maple Leafs find themselves in a quote-unquote rebuild, not a retool, we could potentially be on the cusp of Matthews having his final days in Toronto. How anticlimactic to see that all end off with a final gut-wrenching game, knee-shattering game against Radko Gudas and the Anaheim Ducks. Not to mention the idea that has been tossed out there of Auston Matthews potentially following in the footsteps of Matthew Tkachuk and Quinn Hughes, superstar American hockey players playing for Canadian markets that could be on their way out. Add this to the Brady Tkachuk conversation, and with Tkachuk, Matthews, and Hughes, you have three guys that are/were their captains potentially being on the move. Let's scroll back down into the article over here. Spector's note says this: Yzerman and McLellan won't be replaced, but they will be feeling the pressure to bring the Red Wings playoff drought to an end next season. Most of that pressure will fall on Yzerman, as the past 7 years of that 10-year drought occurred on his watch. He could be in real danger of losing his job if the Wings fall short again next season. As Duff and Kahn observed, finding suitable players to address their roster weaknesses won't be easy this summer. There's little availability in free agency, and a lot of teams flush with salary cap space will turn to the trade market and perhaps even try the offer sheet route. Still, Yzerman does have a couple of factors that could work in his favor. The Red Wings have over $32 million in cap space for 26-27, with 15 active roster players under contract. Edvinsson is completing his entry-level contract and will get a significant raise, and Patrick Kane is the only one of their UFAs expected to be re-signed. They have plenty of space to add a scorer or two. Yzerman can also draw on a deep pool of prospects for trade bait. He was reluctant in the past to dangle those players, but his comments on Thursday suggest he understands he must consider that option to address his roster's pressing needs. Now, that does not directly address the idea of an Auston Matthews acquisition, but I will say, having Auston Matthews with Dylan Larkin, not to mention DeBrincat and Kane, getting some sort of an all-American quintet, especially if you include John Gibson, there's your fifth. And to those wondering whether or not Auston Matthews would be interested in Detroit or the area or just whatever, I do think it's worth the shot. Yes, it's true, Auston Matthews is from San Ramon, California. He is half Mexican over here, but this is a guy who, despite growing up in Arizona, did play a decent chunk of time with the US NTDP. And as we are all familiar with, the US NTDP is based out of Plymouth, Michigan. So there always is some sort of a Michigan connection if you wanted to connect the dots for the majority of these American superstar players. Auston Matthews just had a very difficult and more unique path to get to the NHL. He played his draft season out of Europe and was a staple on the World Junior and World Championship teams before ever suiting up. He then played with Team North America, so he had a very strange pre-NHL career until he became the future 60-goal scorer and 100-point man with the Toronto Maple Leafs that he became. This season, he had 53 points in 60 games. A lot of folks would say that Matthews, recovering from the injuries he had sustained in prior years, held him back on the score sheet, and I think that's a pretty fair way to look at it. It's just, the guy's making so much money, $13.25 million a year. If you're Detroit, do you care about this dollar amount? He'll only be making it for 2 more seasons, but this is one of these guys where he has shown again and again that he can up the ante. It's why he's making this much in the first place. Toronto just stunk last year, so I wonder whether or not Matthews really has another day left with this blue and white sweater on his chest. Do you think the Detroit Red Wings could exchange those colors for red and white? Is it possible Stevie Y targets a guy like Auston Matthews to fit somewhere in this center core to give a newfound line to DeBrincat, Kane, right down the middle? If you wanted to go Larkin, Raymond, whomever on the second line or first line, and then DeBrincat, Matthews, and Kane on the other, I'd say that's a really nice way to do your business if you're the Detroit Red Wings. You have a whole bunch of cap space. If Matthews is available, I say go for it. It's going to cost an arm and a leg, but Stevie Y, you might have no other choice here. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think an Auston Matthews trade to the Detroit Red Wings is a plausible idea? I hope you enjoyed this video, and bye.